Okay, so today we are doing a Palmrest slash keyboard replacement on this A1708 MacBook Pro. This is the silver model. Zoom in there so you can get the model number. It's the A1708, and this is one of the models that uses the butterfly keyboard switch. Now, those are particularly notorious for having keyboard issues. There was actually a recall for this model where Apple was replacing the keyboards for free. This customer was unlucky enough to have missed that deadline, I believe. So now we're going to have to replace the entire top keyboard assembly. So we have the replacement one here. This one didn't come with a touchpad. Um, we got this for a fairly good deal. Some of the keys are a little bit worn, but we got this for a good deal. This runs about $50, $60 for us. It could be more depending on the condition. Um, this one isn't in great condition, but the customer didn't care. They wanted to go the cheapest route, so we're going to be replacing the whole top. Unfortunately, the keyboard doesn't come out. It's not easy on any Apple laptops, so unfortunately, we're going to have to replace the whole top. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to shut the laptop, obviously. We're going to flip it over, and I'll zoom in here so you can get a little bit of a better view of what's going on. Apple really doesn't like having people get inside their laptops. So this uses a Torx driver bit. We use iFixit for our tools, and the bottom screws are a T5 bit. Excuse me, a P5 bit, a Pentalobe 5. So we'll be taking the bottom off first. Now it's a good idea to keep track of these screws because they are different sizes. We have one that's a little bit longer on the two corners, and we have two of them that are a little bit smaller that go in between those two, for the bottom side at least. So usually what I like to do is I like to lay them out on the table next to me in the same order that they came out in, so I kind of have a visual representation of what they look like. So we'll take out the top screws. Again, these are different from all the other ones, all the other four. So keep these in order so you don't put the wrong screw in the wrong hole. Next thing is the bottom has to come off. This is a little bit tricky. We use a suction cup, although you could try to get into the sides and pry it up. Best thing to do, I'll zoom out a little bit. Best thing to do is to use a suction cup. This is a locking one. Go on one of the bottom corner sides. Slowly lift it up. You'll see it start to separate there. We like to use a guitar pick. Once it's up far enough, you can drag this in. You should hear a little click. Go to the other side. Got on there. Pull this up so it lifts up a little bit. Wedge that in there. Try not to put the guitar pick in too far. We're only going like a quarter of an inch. And you should hear another pop. Now you can move the suction cup to the middle. Pull this up. And this is a little bit tricky, but you should hear a pop, and then this will kind of lever up off these top sides. Then you have to pull this down towards yourself, and it will slide right off. Sometimes it can be very tricky, and if you've never taken the laptop apart before, it can actually get stuck sometimes. So you have to really sometimes use a little bit of force to pull it forward, but it will come loose. Okay, so we're in the bottom of the laptop, and obviously everything has to be effectively transplanted into the new one here. First thing we're going to want to do is take out the battery. We definitely don't want to accidentally short out anything on this motherboard because it's quite expensive, and if you're not making a lot of money on the job, then you definitely don't want to be wasting more money on something. So let me zoom in a little bit further here. We have this connector here. I believe this is the data for the battery. We're going to use this little tweezer here, pry that up, and we can pull that out, push that back. This is what connects the battery to the machine. Now, that looks like a Torx driver, but it's actually, it looks like a Pentalobe driver, but it's actually a Torx. I believe that is a T4, or a T5, actually. This is a T5 screw. So we'll put that in there and put that off to the side. Now all we have to do to disconnect the battery from this machine is lift this piece up. Those are the contacts for the power and the data of the battery. So lift those up, and now the battery is disconnected completely, so we shouldn't have to worry about it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do, I'm going to go ahead and take out the left speaker. A lot of this stuff can be done in a different order. I'm not doing anything in any specific order, but I'm going to start by taking out the speaker, left speaker. The speakers are pretty cool because the screws have these little rubber domes in them, so you can actually kind of leave them in when possible. And this is connected to this top connector here. So once again, we'll lift up the little plastic covering it. We'll flip up the top connector there, and we will pull that out. Now the speaker's disconnected. We can lift this up, and this will pull right out. Put that off to the side. I like to leave the screws in because that way they're a lot easier to remember where they went. Next thing we're going to want to do is, I guess I'll be taking out the other speaker. So we'll go ahead and take out this speaker now. This time we'll go ahead and disconnect it first. No particular reason why, just because. I can lift that up, pull this connector out, and now that's out. Take these two screws out. Also, once again, a corkscrew pulls right out, just like that. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to take this out right here, this shield and this connector for the trackpad. These screws do come out, so make sure you know where you're putting them. It's always a good idea. I usually like to leave the shields with the screws that were in them, so I know exactly where they go. We can now pop up this connector. This one you can use like a pry tool. This one will come straight upwards, just like that. Now that we've got that, we will disconnect the wireless antennas. These are these two right here. Just like that. Unscrew the Wi-Fi antenna. And we're going to take the screen out next. This one's a little bit more involved because there's a lot more screws in the process. Make sure my screws are all organized here. Okay, now for the screen, you have to use a pentalobe 2. And all of these little screws here. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 on each side, so you have 12 in total. Now these are very small, so make sure you don't lose these. These are what holds the antenna, which gives your, detects your Wi-Fi signal. This is what gives that structural support and also acts as an antenna to the screen. So we'll take these out. We love the iFixit branded Protect toolkit. It has this bit, it includes it, and it sticks. The screws are very, especially with this driver specifically. These screws they hold in very well. So you can see right there, it's really holding on to that screw, and I can't even pull the screw off. I have to lever it a little bit. We'll keep going. We'll take all these screws off. All 12 of them on both sides, all 6 of them on both sides, which are the 12 total, they are the same size and everything, so you can put all the antenna screws together, which is what we'll do. Okay. Now we can unscrew some of the screen stuff. We have these two, actually, no. We gotta switch back to our Torx driver. For this, we'll use a T4, and we will take out this shield right here first. Again, I recommend leaving the screws with the appropriate shield. That way you'll know exactly where they go to. Those up there. Next one we have is the one that connects the actual screen to the motherboard. Come out just like that. Like that. And once again, just prise upwards. You'll see it pop off just like that. These are also very fragile, so be careful. Okay, we'll now unscrew the screws that hold the antenna bar to the screen connections. We have those two on opposite sides right there. Goes off to the side. And we also have these two right here. These two inner ones. That makes sure we organize them. You'll see now that this comes right up. This is actually connected to the screen. But at this point, we can actually, I'll use our tweezers here and pry this little bar up. And actually, we are going to have to take off these covers first. Same T4 screwdriver will work. Two screws there, this whole thing lifts up. It comes right out just like that. Do the other side too. And we'll pull right out. Now we'll try to go ahead and pry this up. Grabbing both sides, it should start coming up. One of the screws in the antenna is actually stuck, which I've never seen before until now. We'll kind of use it as like a little lever, and hopefully that will come up. Okay, just like that. And now we've got this lifted up, we can pull this out. This might get stuck right here, this antenna screw. Make sure that this screw is taken out and that these antennas are disconnected. And that should be able to pull right out. You might have to push down a little bit, but those will come right out just like that. And that's the antenna bar, so you can put that off to the side. Next thing we'll do is we'll take out the actual screen assembly itself. So we'll switch back over to a T4 screwdriver. Take out these two screws on this side, and then there's another two on the other side. That will come off like that. That's the side, and then we have these two right here. Out. And now the only thing holding the screen on is the main hinge screws. Those screws are a T8, so you can use your T8 bit. Take these out. It's best to start out by only taking off two, because the screen will be very difficult to get out if you take them all out now. It goes off to the side. We'll do this side. We'll take the hinge screws out from each side. Now we will open the laptop, making sure the battery is still disconnected. We'll open the laptop like this. Side. We'll actually hang this over the edge. So what you're going to want to do is make sure the laptop's open at a 90-degree angle. You can take out the remaining two hinge screws after it's open. This will actually allow you to focus. This will actually allow you to get the screen out of the machine. This can be a little bit tricky, and the screen will come right out. You might have to wiggle it a little bit, but try not to use too much force because it is glass. And so now we have just the Palmrest without the screen attached with half of the laptop. Okay, so now the motherboard needs to come out, but before we can do that, we have to disconnect to this right here. This is the audio jack board. So we'll switch back to our T4 screwdriver for that. That shield will come off. And we'll use our guitar pick to pry that up. Use our finger maybe. This one's on there pretty good. Okay. I'd use our finger for that one. Okay, next we'll replace the existing keyboard, which is just up a little bit. Which is right down here. The tweezers to lift that up. Pull that straight out. And now it's disconnected. Close that tab back down. Okay, now we can take out the motherboard and the hard drive. This one has one that's removable. So we'll take the drive out first. And this you can pull by the screw connectors, and it's in a socket, so it just pulls out just like that. The screws with that. And now we can start taking the motherboard out finally. Again, we can use our T4 bit. I'm trying to remember where these screws go because they are different. Even though they're all motherboard screws, they are all different. If I zoom out here, we have one screw up here, one screw down here, and one screw there. So I'll put those off to the side in a place where I'll remember where they'll go. And now we can start taking the board out. We also have one screw up here, connecting the shield to the fan. That can come out. We can lift it by the heatsink, and it should come straight up, and then we can pull it out. That's the board out of that machine. Now we take the fan out. This is 3 screws. We have one here, one down there. And these are also T4 screws. Peel this up. But they actually also have one down here. This whole thing should lift out. It's connected down here. But to unplug the fan, these are tweezers to lift the tab up. Pull it straight back. It'll come out. We'll leave the screws for the fan with the fan. And now we have a bare Palmrest, but the new one didn't come with a touchpad, so we're gonna have to take the touchpad out too. Go over it. Take out the touchpad on this. You have these screws here, these Torx ones. Take those out. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have another 4 on the other side. Those 4 will come out. Those are our touchpad screws. Now we can lift this up. We have 2 remaining ones down here. After that, the touchpad should fall out like that. And we still have this connector here, so we have to lift this up and put it through opening on there. Now we're ready for our new one. So we'll put that off to the side. Here's our new one, so we're going to work backwards to do this. This one didn't have the touchpad, so now we have to put this touchpad in. Do a similar setup. We'll feed the cable in through first. That opening, and we'll just line it up just like that. Back on the desk. Zoom in a little bit. I put these two screws back in first. These ones are shorter than the ones on the side. Okay. I'm going to put the other 8 back in. Probably a good idea to do 2 on each side first. That way it stays aligned. Otherwise it could get misaligned. And the last touchpad screw. Okay, next thing we're going to do, which was the second to last thing we did before, was put the motherboard in. So instead of, we took it out using the lever action side, so we'll do it in the reverse order. Starting with the USB-C ports on this side, we'll put those in, so it goes in the port, making sure we're not trapping any connectors. And we'll set that back into place. Actually, we need to do the fan too, so we'll do the fan first. The fan, drop that back in. Just lay it in there. Screw the fan in. First fan screw. Fan screws are all the same size, so you can't accidentally put one in the wrong one. And the last one. Okay, that's all the fan screws. Make sure we plug the fan in. Screw those down here. So we'll again pry this up. Unlatch the connector. We use our tweezers to guide it in. Make sure that's in all the tape over the top of it. Now we can put the motherboard in. So we'll put this taped connector back on. And now we'll put the motherboard in. Lift all the connectors out. Make sure we're not trapping any of them. Okay, just like that. Okay, now we'll put the motherboard screws in, I guess. We have three of those. We have one here. We have one here. And we also have one at the top right. We put that in just like that. Now we'll start plugging some stuff back in. This is the new keyboard connector. That up. Push that straight in. Tab will go down like that. And the tape goes over top of it. Just like that. Okay, next we will do the solid state drive. The screws for it on the top. But temporarily, slot this back in. Make sure that the drive is above the motherboard. And you can just push that in so that it lines up. And screw that back in. And now we can start plugging some of the connections back in. We'll do the audio jack first. Make sure it's lined up. This one looks like the connector might be a little too far, so we'll try to re-tape it. Just like that. Take that down. Just like that. And make sure that the rubber piece is still aligned. Plug the touchpad back in down here. And take that connector back down. The shield back on for that. The screw holes line up. Screw that back down. And this side, screw that back down. And now we'll probably do the screen. Just like how the screen came out, we have to first make sure that the hinges go in. So we'll lift up the laptop like this. And we'll try to make sure that all these connections are up. Wiggle the hinges into the laptop. Just like that. Try to close the screen so we can do this easier. Okay, now the hinge screws can go back in. We'll start out with only one and then make sure that the screen is aligned with the rest of the computer. See if we have to adjust it. When you close the laptop, it should be even on the edges. Make sure that it's even on both sides. First thing, we will put these two black pieces on. Back to the T4 driver. These use the two longer screws. and one on the other side too. So, and now we can start putting in, go back to the hinges with the rest of the hinges. We know it's aligned. Okay. You can also do this shield that was on this connector down here for the audio jack. Smaller screw goes on the raised side. The larger screw goes on the lower side. Screws on there. Okay, now we can put the antenna bar back in. It's a little bit tricky. You have to use the antennas and kind of go underneath into that little opening. Push the board down. This should slide right in like that. So it goes underneath. Okay, now we can start screwing in some of the screen connections. We can connect the screen, that should snap. We have an audible snap on there. And shield back on. And I screw on the other side. Screws like to run away sometimes. And the other shield on top of the connection for the LCD. Yeah. Now we're ready to put the rest of the screen connections in. We have the two longer screws that went on the edges, the inside part of the antenna. And then the two smaller sets which hold the cable down to the antenna. Okay, now we can screw down the tiny screws. Those were a total of 2 screw head. 12 of these in total. Very small screws. It's a good idea to be slow with them because you can strip them pretty easily because of how small they are. One more on this side. 2 more on this side. This side. We put the wireless wires back in. We usually use tweezers to make sure that they are aligned first before pushing them down. They should snap right on. And then the next one. Also snap right back on. Okay. We have this T4 screw holding the antenna wires to the motherboard. Screw that in. Like that. Okay. Now we can do the left speaker. The speaker will put in at an angle like that. Push that down. Use this lever. Slide that in, set that back down, tape over top of it. We'll do the right speaker now. And like that. Again, we will use the that's open. Close that lever down, tape over top of it. Okay, now we put these little covers back on. But actually, before we do that, we actually have a screw up here that originally held the heatsink to the machine. We'll go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so we'll put these back on now. See that? These go in the same way they went in. You have to push them down and then slide them backwards. That way they sit underneath the metal. Okay, now we can connect the battery back and we should be all set to go. We'll flip this connector up. Back down. Trying to make this easy to see, but it's not working out too well. Push this down for the main battery connector. Through the battery back down. So now the machine has power to the battery. Plug the data connection in. That back down. Take that over. Now the machine's ready to go, but before we put the bottom on, we want to test it, of course. Open it up. Machine on, so it's got battery power. It might take a second for the BIOS to do its thing. Okay, now we've got the laptop plugged in and turned on. We logged in with their password, and now we're just going to test the keyboard before we put the bottom back on. So the website we use is keyboardchecker.com, and pretty much you just press all the keys and they light up so you know which keys are working, which ones are not. We'll go ahead and make sure we hit all the keys here, go down the row, just like that. And make sure all the keys are being detected now. Let's see right out of here. Pair keys and the function keys. I believe all of them except for F11 usually go. F11 hides the window, so it won't detect that, but yeah, so it looks like the keyboard is working perfectly now. So we're going to go ahead and just close the laptop. You can shut it down if you prefer. I'm going to put the bottom back on, and then this will be all set. One other thing I realized is that I didn't screw in the speakers, so I did them already, but make sure that all the screws, double check everything, make sure the battery cover is still on the laptop, make sure, all the screws are screwed down. Speakers are now screwed in on both sides. And yeah, make sure all the shields are on, make sure you don't have any screws left over, and then we can put the bottom on. So the bottom, you can see, it has these little clip things. This is what, when we took it off, made it so we had to slide. So we're going to slide it back on the same way we took it off. So start with one corner and that side, and then the other side slides in the same way. And then you can push down on the left side first so that it snaps in. Just hear a click in the middle, that should click, and then you can start putting the screws back in. Bottom screws were a Pentalobe 5. They are all different sizes, so make sure you remember the order that they went in. Two smaller ones in the middle. And then we have the two remaining largest screws that go on the top corners. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That was how to replace the keyboard / top on the MacBook Pro 13-inch. This is the 2017 model. It's an A1708, but it's the same for A1706 and 2016, 2017 models.